Hey guys! Today I'm going to be doing a review of my experience using Zig and Versamarker embossing pens. I think it's important to note that it's not a first impressions video, as I've been using these products for a few months now, and one of them did change a little over time, so I'll get into that a little bit later. First, let's talk about Versamarker. I got this one first, and I'm an avid Versamarker embossing pad fan. It's probably the best and most trustworthy brand of embossing pad or ink I've used. So, as you could probably guess, I had really high hopes for the Versamarker. It's double tipped, so one end is a brush tip pen. On the other end is a regular fine felt tip. When using the brush tip, it felt slightly flexible, but I still didn't feel really comfortable pressing down too hard. I just get worried about bending the tip beyond repair. It's nice that as you're writing, it's wet with embossing fluid, so you can sort of see what you're writing. I will say, on the upstroke, I was worried that not enough embossing ink got on the paper, since it didn't seem to be nearly as wet as the downstrokes were. I transitioned over to using the fine tip and added some embellishments, although I do admit I wanted to do this step as fast as possible and was not worried too much about how good this looked. The fine tip worked just fine, and like the brush tip side, it's wet so you can easily see what you're drawing. I decided to try using this with both glitter embossing powder as well as fine embossing powder, in case that made any difference at all. First, I'm going to try using the coarser glitter embossing powder. It stuck pretty well, although it doesn't look like anything I expected it to. Next, I'm going to try using the fine metallic embossing powder and find that it sticks pretty well as well, and it also looks really thick. Heated up, this is what it looks like. I do have to mention that when I first used these products, the upstrokes didn't look as thick, but I think the brush tip got maybe bent or frayed over time, since I've used it many times before. Now let's try the Zig Emboss Pen. Like the Versamarker, it's a dual tip pen. One side is a brush tip, smaller than the Versamarker, and the other end is a scroll tip. The brush tip was actually pretty flexible and easy to use. I actually couldn't see what I was writing though, since it dries really quick. So I think that if I were creating a bigger piece with a longer phrase, it might be harder to see. The embossing fluid has sort of a bluish tint, so you can sort of see that, but it's just hard to see in general. I didn't really know what to do with the scroll tip, so I just added a flourish on the bottom of the writing. The scroll tip felt dry, and the blue color was really concentrated, so I was worried that it was dried out and the powder wasn't going to stick. First, I went in with the coarser embossing powder and was pleasantly surprised that everything stuck pretty well. Then I went in with the fine metallic embossing powder, and that stuck pretty well, and I'm glad to see that the powder stuck to the flourishes too. Heated up, I can see that the glitter embossing was fine, but that there were lots of dimples in the fine embossing powder, which tells me that perhaps not enough powder stuck to the lettering. Overall thoughts are, things I really liked about the Versamarker is that it was wet with embossing fluid, and so it had more powder or product that stuck to the lettering. Also, it's easier to see as you're writing, and I like that both tips are pretty functional. Something I personally didn't love was that the brush tip was a bit too thick, and so it was hard to control how thick or thin my upstroke or downstrokes were. Things that I like about the Zig Emboss Pen is that the brush tip is flexible to use. It creates really thick and thin lines really easily, and it was very easy to control. The pen can handle fine lines really well, and as a result, your work is going to end up looking really clean. Something I wish it did better was for the more fine embossing powder, that it would kind of stick to the fluid a little better, so that the result was a little less bumpy. These products are really fun to use overall, and I'm really glad that I have them both because they're perfect for different purposes. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you learned something. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment below of what you'd like to see next. If you'd like to see more blogs and videos like this one, check out my website at www.inkorella.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at InkorellaCards. Thanks for watching!